And hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Last Word on Sports Media Daily Podcast. I'm Mike Gill. What's happening, everybody? Good to have you back with us here on the Last Word on Sports Media. Last night, we talked to J.B. Flint from the Wall Street Journal about the big trade, ESPN TNT, and what it means, how that deal all got put together. We're going to further that conversation today with Michael McCarthy from Front Office Sports Media. You should check out his newsletter, by the way. It's an outstanding read. It is fantastic stuff. I see Michael's work a lot from Front Office Sports, and his new tuned-in newsletter on sports media is over at Front Office Sports. You should definitely take a look at that. He's going to join us in just a couple of moments here. Some of the things that we are going to touch on include Michael's reporting on how this deal got put together and what's next for ESPN, TNT, and everything that happened with Inside the NBA moving to ESPN. I think it's an unbelievable, cool deal. It was a smart deal. It was something that I give Jimmy Pitaro over at ESPN a lot of credit for basically going out there and being able to put this deal together and keeping Inside the NBA going and having TNT get some Big 12 football games. You know, they get a little bit of inventory for TNT Sports, and it's one of those things where it's a win-win for both sides. I want to see if Michael McCarthy agrees with me on that. What it means for TNT Sports going forward. They want to keep that branding going. What it means for the NBA Countdown crew. What it means for ESPN's NBA coverage. All of that stuff we'll discuss here with Michael McCarthy from Front Office Sports in just a couple of moments. NFL Netflix, a home run, a disaster. What does Michael McCarthy think about that? He'll give us some insight on the numbers, how they came up with these numbers, and what this means for the NFL game on Christmas Day, the two NFL games on Christmas Day. TV sports windows. I want to get into this with him as well. You know, I have been talking a lot on the daily podcast here and even on the extended podcast with TJ about TV sports windows. Does Michael McCarthy think that a league could prosper in another sports window? In other words, could they prosper in a noon window on a Wednesday, the NBA, a noon window on a Wednesday, the NHL, or a Tuesday, a night where there's no, or a day where there's no NFL? Can a league own that day? Or even a day where there is NFL on a Thursday afternoon? Could the NBA say, you're going to go Thursday night, we're going to go Thursday afternoon, and you have a 12 and a 3 and, you know, play those games in the afternoon? Is that a TV window that a network can jump in on? Get your thoughts on that and let us know. Last Word on Sports Media, the podcast. Of course, we looked at the ratings last night of the massive win for CBS with that Bills and Chiefs game. And you think about the Bills and the Chiefs being the highest rated game in the NFL this season. It is definitely something that we think could be growing with games down the road. You have a Lions-Bills game coming up. So is this a Chiefs thing, or the Chiefs the new ratings darling? And I want to get Michael's take on whether or not he thinks ESPN could flex out, NBC, it's a Sunday Night Football game, would flex out of a Cowboys game, which they have coming up in a couple of weeks when they play Dallas and Tampa Bay will be the matchup there. So we will get into those topics and more. If you take a look at what we have moving forward here on the Last Word on Sports Media podcast, you can like, rate, review, subscribe. Last night we had huge viewership for the show with Joe Flint from the Wall Street Journal, and we look forward to continuing to have some good content out there for you guys in the sports media world. I think one of the big stories, and I want to get to the ESPN TNT trade and what it means for both of these entities. ESPN basically says, listen, we have the rights to the NBA Finals, but we don't have a show that is NBA Finals worthy. There is a show that is beloved by every NBA fan out there. You know, you never find anybody that's like, I just don't like that show, right? You don't see anybody who's just like, I don't like that show. And one of the things that I think is universal is that show is entertaining. That show is zany. It's fun. It's informative. And there's chemistry that you just can't duplicate. ESPN just kept trying to change the show and change the show and change the show. You can't get chemistry when you're changing. And the particulars of the show just kept changing, sometimes not for the better, unfortunately. And then you got a situation where you fell into a show that they were just constantly trying to duplicate what they do on the TNT show. So I definitely am interested to see how this moves going forward. Now, according to some of the reports, this show will not air every single time ESPN has a game on. So we will be in a situation where some nights you will get the NBA Countdown crew, and other games, bigger games, ABC, network television, Christmas Day, those type of things, the Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, Kenny Smith, and Ernie Johnson, they will be the crew that will be on your television, but it just will be on ESPN. But what I think is the big thing here is it will be produced by TNT producers, TNT studio, because that's one of the big things. The aesthetics of that show just look so different. The desk, the big screen in the back, Kenny running to the screen. Those are the things that ESPN has not been able to duplicate. The look of the studio. And I think that fact that it will be continued to be in that studio also adds to this, keeping the look and feel of that show what it has always been. So I like the trade for both sides. TNT ends up getting 15 Big 12 football games, or 13 or something to that effect, and 13 or 12 Big 12 basketball games. And they get some programming now on their air for September, October, November with the college football that they did not have before, that they had when the NBA was on there. NBA games on Thursday nights, Tuesday nights, whatever nights they had. They now can replace that with some Big 12 footballs. It'll be interesting because they do carry some football now, and it is not high profile. I don't know that anybody actually is watching it. But will they get a TV contract for those conferences that move games to a Friday night or a Thursday night, something to that effect? Or will they just do these games on Saturday, the Big 12 games? And the basketball, they get now some programming that will allow them to fill up the schedule in December and January and February and through March, when March Madness begins. And keep in mind, TNT, along with CBS, has the tournament. They have the games on TBS, Turner, and True TV in the early rounds of those games. And now you're going to get Charles Barkley and the crew on the NBA Finals and the NCAA championship game. Kenny Smith, and Ernie and Charles, of course, they're all part of the Turner coverage of college basketball's tournament as well. So those games that are on the Turner networks, you get there. I think Greg Gumbel and that crew on CBS stay over there. But now you have that situation. So a lot to kind of dive into. ESPN TNT trade, what it means for these two entities. The NFL, Netflix, was it a home run? Is it going to be a home run? What Netflix showed us on Friday night in the Tyson fight, what were those numbers? I want to get Mike's take on TV sports windows moving forward. We'll get into all that right now on this edition of the Last Word on Sports Media Daily Podcast. Michael McCarthy, he joins me right now as we take a look at these topics and more from Front Office Sports. You can check out his new Tuned In newsletter on sports media for Front Office Sports. It's a free twice-weekly newsletter, and just got done reading it this morning. Michael, welcome.
Mike, thanks so much for the invite.
Great to have you. Fan of your work. Been enjoying the newsletter, and a lot of informative bits in there for the people out there that love this kind of stuff. I want to obviously get your take and start with the trade ESPN TNT and what this means for the NBA moving forward now. They get this deal done. They get this lawsuit out of the way. Are they free and clear, and do they feel like this is a win for them?
Absolutely. Fans love Inside the NBA, Mike. In the course of writing about the show, it looked like it was on its last legs, that this was going to be the last season. I've never seen such an outpouring from fans about a single show. Charles, Chuck, Kenny, Shaq, the chemistry's off the hook. They're funny. They're relatable. So the fact that this show is going to survive is a huge win for the NBA and for its fandom.
Michael, this something that they've been talking about for a while, over drinks on a Saturday night. How does this come across so quickly to where one day we're wondering about the future of the show, to the next day we're excited about seeing Charles, Shaq, Kenny, and Ernie on ABC television?
Well, Mike, sometimes you got to get creative. As we all know, Warner Brothers Discovery sued the NBA, claiming that it held matching rights, which was astounding because media rights partners never sue leagues because they're worried that no other leagues will do business with them. And from what I understand, it was at a standstill. Then Jimmy Pitaro, who's the chairman of ESPN, got creative. He calls Louis Silberwasser and says, hey, I got an idea how we could break this legal logjam. Why don't you give us the show and we'll give you Big 12 college football and basketball games, and we'll try to work something out. And that did it. The deal was cut.
Yeah, so many times, Michael, we feel like in sports, there's got to be a winner and a loser. Is there a winner or a loser, or is the only winner the fans here?
I think this is truly a win-win for both sides. ESPN got the show it was lusting after for 20 years inside the NBA. And now, you know what I mean? They'll never have to worry about NBA Countdown being second best. I think it's a win for the fans because their favorite basketball show will remain. And you know what? I think it's a win for TNT and WBD. I mean, David Zaslav, the head of WBD, has been pilloried over this decision. And guess what? He keeps a foot in the NBA. He scored himself a package of 100 international games. He got development rights. So, this risky, almost kamikaze lawsuit he launched against his league partner worked out in the end. But, as I say, it's a win-win-win across the board. But I think the biggest winner is ESPN. As somebody told me about trades, you can judge a trade, Mike, by who ended up with the best player. And ESPN ended up with the best player in Charles Barkley.
I like that one. Michael McCarthy, Front Office Sports. We're looking at this trade. Now what? What happens to NBA Countdown? Everybody just assumes, Inside the NBA is on ESPN. Countdown does not go away. Does that show stay in its current form, or do they have to raise the level of that up too?
No, NBA Countdown will remain, although it'll be very much a second-tier show. Look for it only on the ESPN-only game telecasts during the week. Malika Andrews will continue to be the host. But, let's be real here. Inside the NBA is going to be marketed and promoted and broadcast as the league's marquee game show, studio show.
Real quick, I know a lot of people, Michael, are, I don't want to say worried, or the thought was ESPN with ESPN up Inside the NBA. It's going to be produced in the TNT studios. It'll be produced by TNT, but do you anticipate a Shams or a Stephen A. Smith or any ESPN talent getting appearances on that show, or don't anticipate seeing that at all?
I do. I don't think you're going to see Stephen A. Smith join the show because that would mess with the cast chemistry. But there was already a crossover last year, Mike, if you remember. There was one game where the TNT cast appeared on Countdown and the Countdown cast appeared on Inside the NBA. So they were already dabbling with this crossover stuff. But the thing to remember for all the fans freaking out that ESPN is going to ruin the show is it remains a TNT property.
Yeah.
Barkley and company remain TNT employees. The show will remain in Atlanta with the same production team. So really what it is a licensing deal. ESPN won't own the show and it won't hire Barkley. It's basically licensing the rights to the show. So for now, at least, the show is going to remain as is.
And TNT gets to use Barkley and the crew for other TNT sports properties, correct?
Exactly. They're working on an inside sports show where, Barkley and company will look beyond the NBA. I think you'll see Charles on hockey. I think you'll see Charles on golf. We know he both loves those sports. Kenny, Shaq, they could do anything. Ernie is a TNT lifer. He will continue to do his thing. So, believe me, TNT has a lot of plans for these guys. They're all under contract except possibly Shaq. But I've heard that Shaq wants to be a part of the show in 2025.
Big wins for NBA fans. Michael McCarthy, Front Office Sports. Big wins for Netflix fans. What do we make of the boxing spectacle from Friday night, the glitches, and what it means for Christmas Day coming up here in about a month?
If I'm the NFL, I'm at DEFCON 1 right now. When I saw the glitches and the buffering and all the problems on that fight, the first thing I thought is, can you imagine this happens Christmas Day? Can you imagine Patrick Mahomes is taking the Chiefs down the field against the Steelers and the screen freezes for 2 minutes? NFL fans will lose their collective minds. It will be like the Heidi game in 1968. Remember that one, Mike?
Oh, listen. I could now. I did not have the glitching problems while I watched the fight on Friday night. I guess for the people that did, obviously it was real. It was a topic, but that was what is being reported. How many people do we think watch that game? And I guess the question would be, what is the threshold of when the problems start?
Yeah, the number of people watching the fight varies. Netflix reported 60 million households, peaking at a concurrent of 65 million households worldwide. But again, you got to take those numbers with a grain of salt. There's a lot of questioning about, how many watched the fight. But from Netflix perspective, even though everybody's sniping at their numbers, it was a huge success.
Yes.
I mean, this is one of the most streamed events, if not the most streamed event in sports ever, globally, worldwide, ever. And they had the most streamed women's fight ever. So if they can fix the technical problems and get to the NFL, and don't forget they're also picking up Raw in January, they'll be in a golden position. But I tell you, Netflix better get off their ass and, take a look at their servers, because NFL fans will not be happy if they experienced what I experienced Friday night.
Michael McCarthy, Front Office Sports. That is what's for Netflix. What did you think of the production of the event itself, the broadcast, and all that stuff?
Not much. I don't think the announcers added much. Why was Rosie Perez there?
We were wondering that ourselves. Does she have a show on Netflix that she was promoting?
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't quite sure what her role was. It felt like they took a dart and threw it and found these people.
Yeah, I mean,
entertainer.
Who were these people? She's there to add Brooklyn, to it. What does that mean? It was like a thrown together mess. I thought Helwani did a pretty good job with the interviews afterwards, but I wasn't that impressed with the production team. But then again, this is what happens when you have a one-off event like that. These people haven't had a chance to work together. They haven't had a chance to rehearse. They have zero chemistry. It's not like you're judging an NFL broadcast team after they had a full 16-game schedule. So, yeah, the answer is I don't think the production added much. But, they were hindered at all close. I mean, they throw it to Jerry Jones. His mic doesn't work. You know what I mean?
As he's praising Netflix, his mic goes out.
Was that the funniest thing ever?
Hilarious.
There's Jerry, the ultimate salesman, saying how Netflix is the future of the NFL and his mic doesn't work. And then they throw it to Vander Holyfield. He can't hear the questions. So the other guy has to. It's just a comedy of errors.
Yeah, it was comical.
So,
you're right.
Yeah, I mean the production team was not helped. The broadcast team was not helped by the production failures.
To be clear, the NFL will have the Noah Eagle and Ian Eagle will be the play-by-players for the two games. I believe it's T.J. Watt and Greg Olson are the analysts, and it will be produced not by MVP Productions, which is Jake Paul's production company. You're going to get, I believe it's CBS is producing those games, so you should have a higher quality crew putting these games together. Speaking of the NFL, Michael, 31+ million viewers. It's the most watched game this season so far. Bills and Chiefs. What does that say for the last half stretch run of the season here?
It says again that the NFL operates on a level beyond all other sports. You know what I mean? It's the numbers they get are staggering. The other thing I'm taking from this, Mike, if you dig down into the numbers, here's something a lot of people don't know: the Chiefs are now America's team, TV wise.
Does that mean we can get Dallas off of the – I know you can't get rid of them for Thanksgiving. You can't get rid of them for that Simpsons game. But do you think NBC, Tampa Bay, Dallas says we're going to kick Dallas to the curb here, or are they still too big of a draw to flex them out?
I think they're too big of a draw. I think even if Dallas was winless, Mike, NBC would show it because 25 million people would still tune in just to hate watch the Cowboys.
Bummer.
That's how much of an impact they've had over 25 years. But, to go back to Mahomes and the Chiefs, it's not even close. The top 5 most watched games, the Chiefs have played in 4 of them, 4 out of the top 5, and the Cowboys have played in 1. That says it all.
Well, we'll see. We got some big games. I'm interested to see this, Michael. You got a Bills-Lions game. So is it the Chiefs' power? It's a 4:25 CBS game. It'll be up against Eagles-Steelers that week. So that's going to be a big week to see what ratings power these teams that aren't the Chiefs or Cowboys can really bring, because that's probably going to be 2 heavy-hitting games in that window. It's about 4 weeks from now, December 15th.
Yeah, Mike, it's an excellent point. I think those are 2 real great TV attractions. I mean, the Lions have got everybody talking, and you saw that, people love, watching the Bills, as we saw this week when they had the most watched game of the season. So I think that's a great TV matchup that's going to draw a big number. And also, don't forget, Mike, that 4:25 window is the most watched NFL window every weekend. It's not Thursday night. It's not Monday night. It's not Sunday night. It's that 4:25 late afternoon window.
All right, Michael, I've had a discussion on the podcast. It's got a lot of good feedback. I want to get your feedback on this, on sports TV windows. I have advocated that a NBA or NHL should own an afternoon. Live sports TV is owning the television. So is there a window where another network can say, hey, NBA, we're going to put you on Tuesday afternoon starting at noon. We're going to have a pregame show at 11 a.m., live sport at noon, 2, 5, all the way through the day. Is that something that you think could work?
It could work. The problem is all the windows are taken. But again, Mike, you got to get creative.
Right.
And that's where I give credit to Fox Sports. Who knew that if they put their biggest college football game at noon, they'd, in effect, create a new window. And you know what? It was more successful than anybody thought. And Fox is trying to replicate that by throwing, big college football games now at Friday night. So I think if you're the NBA or the NHL, you really have to get creative. You got to see around the corner and look for a way to avoid the juggernaut that's the NFL.
Agree with that totally. By the way, Michael McCarthy, you can check out his weekly, two times a week, free weekly tuned in sports media newsletter at Front Office Sports. And I'll leave you with this as we get ready to kind of go into baseball's future. What is baseball's television future with all of these regional networks falling apart? Michael, where do you see them? Will they be an attractive item down the road for the networks, or is baseball nationally just not a plan for these TV networks or the streamers?
I think it'll be attractive. I don't think it's attractive as the NFL, quite certainly. I think it's really become a regional sport where if you have a strong regional team, you can still make money and still make big ratings. Where I see it going is I see the league picking up a lot more of these regional telecasts. The league is smart. They see that the cable bundle's falling apart, you know what I mean? And there's no way to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. So I think they're going to try to gather up as much of these local rights and show them nationally.
Michael, the newsletter is fantastic for everybody watching, listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and read the newsletter. It comes out twice daily. Michael, is there any other stories that you have coming up that you have your eye on?
Well, there's a couple of things. You know what I mean? We just did a story that we broke on the Trump dance. So you're familiar with this, Mike?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of talk this weekend that the NFL might ban it or that the networks were going out of their way not to show it. And we talked to the NFL. In fact, it's just the opposite. The NFL told us they have, quote unquote, no issue with players like Nick Bosa doing the Donald Trump dance, and that they have zero directions to their TV networks on, how or if they should show it. So I think with that kind of green light, I think you're going to see a lot more closeted Trump supporters come out of the woodwork and do the Trump dance this weekend after a touchdown or a sack.
Michael McCarthy, everybody, Front Office Sports, and check in the Tuned In newsletter twice weekly. It's free. You can check out all sports media stuff. He's a senior reporter at Front Office Sports. Michael, thank you for joining Last Word on Sports Media.
Mike, thank you for inviting Front Office Sports.
Appreciate it. Michael McCarthy, everybody, kind enough to join us. You just heard what he had to say about the big stories in sports media. And, of course, we'll have another podcast tomorrow with TJ. I'll be back on Friday's edition of the Last Word on Sports Media podcast. Like, rate, review, and subscribe. The audio pod will drop in just a little bit. We appreciate everybody for listening to Last Word on Sports Media. I'm Mike Gill.